Roger Federer, tennis greatest billionaire, a man who turned a 3% stake in a Swiss shoe company into more wealth than 20 Grand Slam titles ever generated, attempted to place a $500,000 wager on Alex Eala lifting a Grand Slam trophy. The bookmakers refused it, flatly, completely, without negotiation. Not because the money was too large, not because the request was illegal, but because every major sportsbook on Earth had already reached the identical, unavoidable conclusion. The odds on Alexandra Eala winning a Grand Slam had collapsed so dramatically, so rapidly, that accepting Federer's $500,000 bet would have amounted to financial suicide. Think about that. The most respected tennis mind alive, a man whose investment instincts turned $500 million out of a single shoe company, watched Eala perform, pulled out his checkbook, and the gambling industry said, "No, the risk is too severe. Stay until the very end, because the full architecture of what Alex Eala has constructed and exactly why Roger Federer's legendary eye for excellence locked onto her is a story that will genuinely alter how you see the future of the sport." Roger Federer does not distribute praise carelessly. This is a man who spent 24 years competing at the absolute summit of professional tennis, who won 20 Grand Slam titles, who occupied the world #1 ranking for 310 weeks, a tenure so dominant it rewrote every standard of excellence the sport had ever established. He does not gesture toward potential lightly. He does not endorse generously. He does not open his checkbook for sentiment. He opens it for certainty. By 2026, Federer had transitioned from athletic legend into something considerably more formidable, a billionaire investor whose instincts for identifying transformational value had already produced extraordinary results. His 3% equity stake in Swiss sportswear brand On Running, acquired in 2019 after his wife Mirka began wearing the shoes, was now valued at a minimum of $500 million. That single investment had generated more financial return than every Grand Slam trophy, every tournament prize check, every endorsement contract across his entire 24-year playing career combined. Roger Federer made more money predicting the future of a shoe brand than he did winning 20 of the most prestigious trophies in sport. His former coach, Paul Annacone, the man who shaped both Sampras and Federer to Grand Slam titles, two of the most technically refined players in tennis history, had already spoken publicly about Eala by early March 2026. Appearing on Tennis Channel Live, he did not hold back. "She's got a smile that lights up a room," he said. "I remember last year when she beat Iga Swiatek, and she did it with a lot of grace and humility. For me, it was terrific to see her take that match and watch her play after that and watch her try to continue to progress because I like her game." Annacone singled out the technical qualities that distinguished Eala from her peers: superior hand-eye coordination, the rare ability to absorb incoming pace and redirect it with precision, and an early ball striking pattern that disrupted opponents before they could construct comfortable rally positions. These are not surface-level compliments from a social media analyst. These are surgical observations from a coaching intellect that spent years analyzing Pete Sampras at his zenith. When the man who shaped Federer's greatest seasons identified those qualities in a 20-year-old Filipina ranked 31st in the world, Federer listened. And then, according to the story that detonated across every tennis platform simultaneously, he did far more than listen. But before we get to the bookmakers and what they refused, you need to understand exactly what Federer witnessed that triggered this wager, because the evidence he was reacting to is more extraordinary than any odds sheet could capture. 12 months. That is all the elapsed time between Alexandra Eala arriving at Indian Wells ranked 140th in the world, unnoticed, unheralded, carrying no seeding and no expectation, and returning to that identical California desert as the 31st seed, the most talked about athlete at the entire tournament, and the subject of a wager from the most decorated champion in men's tennis history. 12 months. Examine what filled that interval. March 2025, Miami Open. Eala enters as a wild card, meaning the tournament extended entry as a courtesy gesture, not a competitive prediction. She eliminated Madison Keys, the reigning Australian Open champion. She eliminated Jelena Ostapenko, a former Roland Garros title holder. She dismantled Iga Swiatek, world number 1, the dominant clay court sovereign of her generation, in straight sets. 4 matches, 3 Grand Slam champions eliminated. No Filipino in the entire recorded history of the Open era had ever accomplished anything approaching this at a WTA 1000 event. September 2025, U.S. Open. Flushing Meadows, Eala's first Grand Slam main draw. She faces Clara Tauson, a dangerous, unpredictable opponent, falls behind 1-5 in the deciding set. Every conventional reading of match psychology suggests capitulation. Instead, she manufactures a comeback that makes the grandstand arena, packed with Filipino-American supporters from the Queens community, erupt into noise that carries across 3 courts. She becomes the first Filipino in Open-era history to win a Grand Slam singles main draw match. December 2025, Southeast Asian Games, Bangkok, Eala delivers a 6-1, 6-2 obliteration of Thailand's Mananchia Sawankao in the gold medal final. The Philippines had not won women's singles gold at the SEA Games in 29 years. Eala carries that weight, absorbs it, and converts it into dominance. She hands the medal to her mother, a former national swimmer who won SEA Games bronze 40 years prior, and both women weep on the court.
February 2026. Dubai Tennis Championships. Eala reaches the quarterfinals. She falls to Coco Gauff, emphatically 6-0, 6-2. It is a brutal scoreline that would shatter most players' confidence heading into the next tournament. March 2026. Indian Wells. The rematch everybody anticipated. Gauff, ranked 4th in the world, a 2-time Grand Slam champion, playing effectively on home soil. Eala, 3 rounds removed from a near elimination against Diana Yastremska that finished close to midnight California time after 2 hours and 43 minutes of combat. The prediction? Gauff in 3 sets. The result? Eala dominates 6-2, 2-0 before Gauff's left arm forces retirement. The reversal from Dubai, from 6-0, 6-2 defeat to 6-2, 2-0 dominance, accomplished in 17 days. I really didn't want to win this way, Eala told the Stadium One crowd afterward. But this is still a really big moment for me, to be able to play on the stadium of Indian Wells and against such a great competitor. I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm super happy. She is now 3-3 against top 5 opponents. She has defeated the world number 1, the reigning Australian Open champion, a former French Open champion, and the world number 4. She is 20 years old. She is ranked 31, 1 position below her career high of 31, reached just weeks prior. This is what Roger Federer's investment eye absorbed. This is the evidence behind the wager. And when Federer called the bookmakers, the conversation that followed revealed something extraordinary about where the tennis establishment believes this story is heading. Here is the verified financial architecture of Roger Federer's instinct before we address what happened with the bookmakers directly. Federer's net worth reached an estimated $1.1 billion in 2026, making him one of only 7 athletes to achieve billionaire status. His stake in On Running, acquired in 2019 after finding his wife and friends captivated by the brand, is now worth at least $500 million, as the company's valuation approaches $17 billion. This is a man who identified compressed value in a Swiss shoe startup before the broader market recognized it, invested his own capital, and watched that decision multiply into $500 million.
His business acumen extends across multiple ventures, co-founding Team 8 Management alongside longtime agent Tony Godsick in 2013, launching the Laver Cup, which now generates over $20 million annually, and backing plant-based food startup Notco at a $1.5 billion valuation alongside Lewis Hamilton. Every investment Federer touches carries the same fingerprint. He identifies compressed value before the market catches up. He moves before consensus forms. He bets on trajectory, not current position. He made his on-running investment when the brand was an obscure Swiss startup. He co-founded the Laver Cup when team tennis had no proven commercial model. And now, according to the story that shattered tennis social media, he looked at a 20-year-old Filipina ranked 31 in the world with a 10-6 WTA record in 2026 alone, victories over 4 separate Grand Slam champions, and a level of cultural magnetism the sport had not witnessed since Serena Williams, and concluded that her first Grand Slam title was not a question of if, but a question of which tournament and when. He placed the call. $500,000. Eala to win a Grand Slam. The bookmakers declined. Their reasoning, as reported across multiple gambling industry sources that broke the story simultaneously, was arithmetically straightforward. Eala's odds had compressed so dramatically in recent weeks following Miami, the U.S. Open, Dubai, and now Indian Wells results that accepting a $500,000 wager at current prices would expose the books to catastrophic liability if she performed in accordance with her visible trajectory. The risk-to-return calculation had inverted. The house could no longer comfortably take the other side of this bet. Read that again. The gambling industry, an industry professionally constructed around absorbing risk, determined that the risk of Alexandra Eala winning a Grand Slam was too substantial to accept at any price Federer considered reasonable. When the bookmakers are more frightened of a tennis player than the billionaire trying to bet against them, what does that tell you about what is coming? Pause. Because what happened next, the reaction from legends, coaches, and the Philippines itself is where this story becomes something far beyond tennis. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. By noon, it had crossed 14 language barriers. By evening, it occupied trending positions across X, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook simultaneously in the Philippines, the United States, Switzerland, Australia, and Spain. The reaction split immediately into 2 distinct categories: those who understood Roger Federer's investment history and found the wager entirely logical, and those encountering Alex Eala's name for the first time who scrambled to understand what they had missed. For those in the second category, the discovery was staggering. Alex Eala currently sits at world number 31, one place below her career high of 31 reached just weeks prior. At her most recent tournament, the Dubai Tennis Championships, she reached the quarterfinals before falling to Coco Gauff. In 2026 alone, Eala carries a 10-6 record on the WTA Tour, with victories over Donna Vekic and Yasmin Paolini among the most prominent. Paul Annacone, former coach to both Roger Federer and Pete Sampras, captured the essence of Eala's appeal precisely. He's got a smile that lights up a room. I remember last year when she beat Iga Swiatek, and she did it with a lot of grace and humility. For me, it was terrific to see her take that match and watch her play after that and continue to progress. Former world number 1 Kim Clijsters had already delivered a warning about the weight Eala carries. She has to deal with this life of being like Michael Jordan in the Philippines. It's not easy to deal with changes like that so quickly. Martina Navratilova, who had spoken publicly about Eala before Indian Wells, found herself quoted and re-quoted as the story spread. Alison Risk-Amritraj, a former world number 18, was asked to identify a women's player who attracted comparable support wherever she competed. She reached back years before finding a parallel, Sania Mirza at the peak of her career.
Eala herself, arriving at Indian Wells, had articulated something both humble and enormously revealing. To be living my dreams and playing in Indian Wells with a lot of people supporting me is something I've dreamed of since I was young. After advancing past Gauff via retirement, Eala used her on-court interview to acknowledge International Women's Day.
First and foremost, I want to say Happy Women's Day, everybody. I want to say thank you to all the incredible women who have paved the way and who have advocated for themselves and for other women. That statement, delivered on Stadium One at Indian Wells, broadcast globally on the day she became the first Filipino in tournament history to reach the round of 16, crystallized precisely what Federer had recognized. This was not merely a tennis player. This was a cultural force wearing a tennis uniform. Despite never yet winning a WTA singles title, Eala already ranks among the most globally popular players in women's tennis, drawing enormous support at every tournament. A tournament day in the life video featuring her became the most viewed content in Indian Wells' digital history within 48 hours of release. And the Philippines, 25 million Filipinos abroad, diaspora communities from California to the Gulf to Singapore, did not merely follow the Federer story, they owned it. Social media posts celebrating the wager outnumbered posts about any other sports story in Philippine digital space for 3 consecutive days. This is what compressed odds look like when they become a cultural movement. The gambling industry has no emotional relationship with athletes. It maintains no tribal loyalty, no national pride, no nostalgic attachment to legacy. It processes data, assigns probability, and protects margin. When a major sportsbook refuses a bet, particularly one offered by one of the most famous and financially sophisticated sports figures alive, it is issuing a probabilistic statement grounded entirely in evidence. And the evidence against accepting Federer's wager was overwhelming. Eala has demonstrated a repeated, documented pattern of delivering her finest tennis in the most pressurized circumstances. At Indian Wells alone, she came back from 4-5 down in a deciding set against Diana Yastremska, breaking back, then winning 3 consecutive games to complete a 7-5, 4-6, 7-5 triumph just before midnight local time. Against Goff, she reversed a 6-0, 6-2 Dubai defeat into 6-2, 2-0 dominance within 17 days. Eala herself, after winning the CE Games gold, explained where she believed her competitive advantage originated. "I don't think I'm the best in the world at any of those things. Forehand, backhand, drop shot. The thing that I can control the most is how I think, how I approach certain obstacles. A big part of that is to do with my foundation growing up, the values that my family instilled in me since I was young. I like to think that's what sets me apart." That statement, delivered quietly, without theater, without manufactured inspiration, is more frightening to her opponents than any forehand winner she has ever struck. Eala is telling the world that her decisive competitive weapon is not physical. It is architectural. It is mental. It is the product of a value system constructed over years that produces composure when every conventional indicator suggests collapse. She now owns a 3-3 record against top 5 opponents in the world. Victories over Madison Keys and Iga Swiatek at Miami 2025, and now Coco Gauff at Indian Wells 2026. She has reached the round of 16 at Indian Wells, first Filipino in tournament history to do so. Linda Noskova awaits in the 4th round with a potential quarterfinal against 7th-seeded Jasmine Paolini, a player Eala already defeated in Dubai. Beyond that, 2 years ago, Eala described Federer and Serena Williams as inspirations, while acknowledging their retirements confirmed they are also people. She spoke with the quiet reverence of a teenager absorbing greatness from a respectful distance. She said, "These people have blazed a trail for so many other young tennis players and young athletes, and it seems like they've been around forever, and you feel like they can keep going and going." Now, the man she described as an inspiration is placing $500,000 on her name. The student has not merely followed the trail the legend blazed, she has begun constructing one of her own, and the bookmakers understand the implications of that trajectory far better than most tennis commentators have yet acknowledged. When Roger Federer's coaching legacy speaks publicly and Roger Federer's financial instincts move privately, it is generally advisable to pay very close attention. One more chapter, and this is the one that will stay with you long after this video ends. There is a specific category of athlete that transcends their discipline entirely. Muhammad Ali, Serena Williams, Manny Pacquiao, Michael Jordan. These are not athletes who became famous. These are athletes who became emblems, compressed representations of entire communities' identities, ambitions, and collected dignity. The process by which an athlete crosses from competitor to emblem is rarely announced. It accumulates gradually, then arrives with sudden, irreversible clarity. One morning, the story is about a tennis player. The following morning, it is about something much larger. Eala crossed that boundary sometime between Indian Wells 2025 and Indian Wells 2026. 12 months ago, she arrived at Indian Wells ranked 140th. Today, she holds 31. A day in the life video posted to the tournament's official YouTube channel became the most viewed content of the entire 2026 BNP Paribas Open by a significant margin. Her Instagram following has more than doubled that of players ranked similarly on the WTA Tour. She is now the first Filipino player to reach Indian Wells round of 16 since the tournament's inception. She stands 3 wins from a WTA 1000 final at the event, dubbed tennis's 5th Grand Slam. And beyond the court, Philippine ticket sales, merchandise, viewing figures, and digital engagement have transformed at every tournament she enters. When asked at her post-match Indian Wells press conference what tournaments could encourage new fans drawn primarily to specific players, Eala, 20 years old, 31 in the world, carrying the combined emotional weight of millions, responded with a maturity that drew admiration from every journalist in the room. She is not unaware of what she carries. She has spoken about fake news articles targeting her name, viral misinformation requiring public corrections, and the psychological weight of representing an entire nation's sports identity every time she walks onto a court. She manages it consistently, with the identical composure she demonstrated trailing 1-5 in a third set at midnight in the California desert. And Roger Federer, a billionaire whose genius for recognizing transformational value created $500 million from a shoe investment, looked at all of this assembled evidence and reached a conclusion so certain he was prepared to place $500,000 on it publicly. The bookmakers, assessing identical evidence through a purely mathematical lens, determined the risk was too severe to accept. When the gambling industry and the greatest champion in men's tennis history arrive at the same conclusion from opposite directions, one driven by financial survival, one driven by pattern recognition sharpened over 22 years of elite competition, the message being transmitted is not subtle. A Grand Slam title is coming. The only open variable is timing. So, here's the question that belongs in the comment section below, and we genuinely want your answer. Which Grand Slam does Alexandra Eala win first? Roland Garros, where the clay rewards her early ball precision? Wimbledon, where her hand-eye coordination and ability to redirect becomes devastating on grass? The US Open, where she already made history, and where the Filipino-American crowd provides a roar no other player receives? Or the Australian Open, where Southern Hemisphere summers and a fan culture built for underdogs create the perfect stage? Drop your pick, drop your reasoning, because this conversation is no longer about whether, it is entirely about where and when. From a wild card at Miami to the subject of a refused $500,000 wager from the greatest champion tennis ever produced. From ranked 140th to 31. From the first Filipino to win a Grand Slam main draw match to the first Filipino to reach the round of 16 at Indian Wells. From a teenager describing Federer as an inspiration to a competitor whose trajectory Federer is willing to stake $500,000 on. Alexandra Eala did not request this story. She simply refused to accept a smaller one.
The bookmakers have spoken, the billionaire has moved, the numbers have compressed, and somewhere in Indian Wells, California, preparing for Linda Noskova in the round of 16, on a court packed with Filipino flags and erupting noise, a 20-year-old from Quezon City is focused entirely on the next point. That singular focus is precisely why Roger Federer opened his checkbook, and precisely why the bookmakers shut theirs. The Grand Slam is coming. The only question left is your answer in the comments below. Subscribe right now and hit the bell. Every week, we bring you the deepest, most emotionally charged stories from the world.